Hi, everyone. Welcome to this edition of TADA Talks. My name is Todd Bourgon. I'm the Executive Director of the TADA. Today's podcast is sponsored by CADA Benefits 360. And joining me for our conversation about the industry and the state of our industry today is President and CEO of the CADA, Canadian Automobile Dealers Association, Tim Royce.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Well, let's get right into it so that we're using everybody's time to the best of our capabilities. And, everyone always wants to know when they get your ear or my ear. So what is the general state of the auto industry, and what are we looking like as we head towards December of hopefully the end of the pandemic year?
Hopefully, yes.
Yes.
So this is the current picture that we have for Canada as a country. Now, this might hold true for some brands, not all brands. So it's an all sort of encompassing industry status that we have. So what we're seeing is that as we start getting out of COVID, the market recovery continues to be hampered by the supply problems caused by the chip shortage. And we're seeing that pretty much all brands are being affected by that. Now, having said that, we still expect the market to close at roughly 1.55, 1.6 million units for the year. So that's a slight increase, stable to slight increase versus previous years. Now, what we understand from all the indications that we're receiving from OEMs, from our external and external sources, international sources, et cetera, is that there will be sort of a partial normalization of that supply situation by, let's call it late spring or early summer of next year. Now, when I've made that statement a few times with dealers, they immediately ask, well, is it more late spring or more early summer? I think that the actual timing of when the recovery is in full swing will not be as important as how quickly that will happen, and how quickly might we come from a chronic undersupply situation to a chronic oversupply situation as manufacturers try to make up for lost time, if you will. The one piece I would caution going forward is on EV supply. We expect that supply of electric vehicles to remain critical for at least 2 to 3 years as the OEMs adjust their supply chains and their production to that sort of new reality. So we expect EVs to be tight in supply for the next 2 or 3 years worldwide. And then for next year, we expect a slight market increase to overall to roughly 1.65 million units for the total Canadian market, with any growth happening in the second half of the year. So that's sort of our crystal ball at the moment.
No, and I think I'm glad you talked about inventory and the timing, because as I've mentioned to you offline, is that the good news is a lot of dealer meetings are starting to take place, and a lot of them have taken place in Vegas, and not all, but a couple have come back and have had concerns, and I'm not sure if they were concerns that were brought in formal meetings or maybe brought at the cocktail reception afterwards about that timeline might be a little bit longer. But I'm with you. I think that we do know from the research that both we've done and you guys have done, there is definitely pent-up demand. That's something that all media forums are talking about. And then at some point, you're right, we'll be in a capacity on the opposite side. So I'm glad to hear that. One of the things that our association has been proud of over last number of years is a product called our workforce study, and for all intents and purposes, it's a study on a number of different metrics, mainly compensation in different positions and regions within the dealership. This is something that I know is near and dear to your heart, and you asked us if the CADA could take this out on a national level. So happy to hear that you are, and thanking you for that. But why don't you tell us a little bit about that program, and for certainly those that may not have had experience utilizing it, and why CADA took it on.
Sure. So, we had the situation across the country that certain provinces were, let's call it, ahead of the curve, like TADA in Ontario with these employment surveys, the submissions being online, being fairly easy, basically payroll data being pulled directly from DMSs, things of that nature, right? And electronic supply with a website of an employment survey. And then we had at the other end of the spectrum certain provinces that did not have that, and other provinces that had sort of in-house resources doing it in Excel sheets, right, to make it transparent. So we saw an opportunity here to offer a sort of common product, if you will, across the country, and we're basing it on what TADA did in Ontario. So if you're an Ontario dealer, you will hardly see any differences from what you had before, right? The way you submit your information, the way you get it, it will not a lot will have changed for you as an Ontario dealer. But again, dealers across the country that did not have this before will now have that. Oh, and by the way, they will have it at no additional cost. CADA is picking up the tab on this on a national level. The importance of an employment survey, obviously, it gives dealers relevant metrics that they can compare themselves against when it comes to remuneration and things of that nature, and pay schemes that they might have. And the possibility of having national data then also becomes interesting, because then we can also operate on a national level to look, for example, if there are any differences between brands that would interest us, etc. But obviously that's only possible to do if we have enough, let's call it uptake, if you will, of those studies. And then, the typical selections that you can do within each province for rural versus metropolitan or versus GTA, all of that will still be absolutely possible. So for TADA members, not a lot will change. Yeah, everything will continue. For a lot of other dealers that have never been exposed to that, this will be, completely new.
It's an incredible product. It's something that our dealers ask us for. Are you doing it this year? We do it. We've done it every 2 years, obviously. And I think that what you guys are doing is fantastic. The one thing that I always often remind our members too is that, we really are in a talent war for talent in our industry, whether it's on the fixed side or on the front end. And frankly, sometimes they tend to look at their competitors being other dealers. Well, it's a big segment. There's other organizations out there that do repairs, sell tires, and do all those wonderful things that it's important to have a benchmark as to what you can offer and how you can be competitive in that area. So congrats to you guys.
Thanks. And there's one other survey that we have that's very important, that's just upcoming, if I may shamelessly plug it. It's the DSI, the Dealer Satisfaction Index, which will be launching very soon. Probably by the time this is broadcast, it's already launched, and we'll be running from October 28th to December 6th. Yeah, and again, this is the most important tool for the communication of dealers with their respective brands. Last year, we had a participation rate of 75%. That was a huge record. And by the way, in international comparison, that's up at the top, with other countries that run DSI surveys, and some brands even had over 90% participation. So fingers crossed, the participation rate again this year will be even higher than that.
That's excellent. And no, I'm glad you talked about that. I think I always look forward to that report coming out, usually in February around the auto show.
Exactly.
Before I get into our next topic, at the beginning, when I introduced our podcast for today, certainly wanted to recognize CADA 360 as our sponsor. You guys are very supportive. You also mentioned about the workforce study that is something CADA is funding. I think it's really important that you're candid and take advantage of the opportunity. That benefits program is second to none. Our organization and many organizations have been on it, but maybe talk a little about how important it is to the national cause advocacy and these types of programs that Sure. Really and truly it does fund in many ways.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity. So CADA 360 is the main funding source that CADA has, right? Your membership dues is a very important piece of the financing of the provincial associations, right? But the CADA 360 benefits program is basically what funds all of our work at CADA when it comes to advocacy on a federal level with governments, and then also supporting important provincial advocacy work. So, and the program is designed by dealers and for dealers. So the program is administered by dealers. So we have an employee benefits committee set up with dealers. We have Canada Life, so professionals running it for us in the background, right? But the program is by dealers and for dealers, and it is run as a nonprofit. So any profit in the program that is no longer required to fund, possible future claims, is plowed back into the program, and therefore keeping rates attractive attractive over a period of years. So for example, we're just going through the new renewal period. So within this renewal period, again, rates remained stable. There was no increase in rates. When you compare that to some of the other competitors in the marketplace, it's very different. Not only that, but the strength of the program, and having now over 60% of rooftops across Canada on the employee benefits program, the strength of that program was clearly displayed last year when we were able to, within a very short period of time, we waived 2 months of premium payments for dealers that were on our program in the months of April and May. Not deferred, waived 2 months. So you can imagine what financial commitment that was. That was huge in the middle of the pandemic to keep help dealers obviously with their cash flow, and then also to enable them, for example, as they were going through personnel adjustments, to at least keep benefits flowing for some of their employees, while dealerships were figuring out, okay, how long is this going to be? Can I bring people back? Yes, no. So that was a very, very important tool last year, and that can only be done if the program is strong and dealers support it.
Well, I can speak firsthand that we were one organization that received benefit of that what I call fee holiday, and to your point, not waived, and it really at that time certainly meant a lot to our outlook and what we're dealing with as an association that relies upon its not just membership dues, but its events that haven't been taking place for well over a year now. So. I can certainly speak firsthand, and there's a number of things. I could probably sit here for another hour, but we won't, and talk about what some of those funds have gone towards. But one of the biggest ones in recent times has been the CRA's challenge on the finance reserves. And I know in Ontario that we think we're low in the estimate, but we're over $60 million a year in taxes that would have been spread out amongst over 1,000 dealers. That's a lot of money in an economy that's real tight. So. That's one example of many that organization helps fund, and you guys certainly take well advantage of, or good advantage of.
Yeah. So that's an example of a legal fight, right, with CRA. The other, on a pure advocacy is getting dealers included in CEWS, as part of the federal relief program during the pandemic. All of that stuff is only possible thanks to the support of dealers that sign up to the CADA 360 programs.
And I heard firsthand, as probably you did on many occasions, that CEWS program saved a lot of businesses in our industry from some ugliness. So that's great. I want to move on to the luxury tax before we wrap up. Maybe give us an update as to kind of where it started. In other words, like where the pin was on the wall with this luxury tax, where it's ended up since the election, and really now the cabinet's coming back. I believe end of November at some point. What's the reality of timing? So if you might fill us in on what that looks like, I would.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So I think what's important to remember is that as an association, we have already had one big win, if you will, on this fight. Right? It's not over the finish line yet, and that is the program. The luxury tax was originally designed to tax the full amount of the vehicle pricing once it was over 100,000. So on a vehicle that costs 120,000, the tax would have been 10% on the full volume, so $12,000. If a vehicle was 99,000, no luxury tax, right? So that's what's called back to $1 taxation. We made it clear to the government that was nonsense, and it was going to lead to a lot of problems around that sort of cliff on the $100,000 mark. They followed our advice, and in the current proposal and the current architecture of it, it was turned into what's called a marginal tax. So only the amount above 100,000 is taxed. So in that same example, on a vehicle of 120,000, the tax as it currently stands, or would be, only $4,000 instead of $12,000. Okay, so that's a huge win already right there if it remains that way and goes through the finish line. So let's just remember that for a second. The biggest problem that we still have and we're still fighting very, very hard on is what's called compounding taxation. And that affects two provinces, BC, that already has a luxury tax on the books, in Quebec, that has a registration, price-based registration fee every year. So for those two provinces, we have been pushing the government hard to find some sort of accommodation and credit for those provinces that already have something on the board. And we even provided them with the blueprint with their own blueprint of how to do this, which is a carbon tax, right? Where provinces that already have something, right, can receive credit in the federal system for it. So we provided them with their own blueprint of how to do this, right? Unfortunately, I have to be very honest and clear, there's not a lot of progress on that front. It would seem that at this point in time, if the luxury tax comes the way it is, it will actually mean a compounding taxation in BC and Quebec, which would have disastrous effects on quite a few of our members. It would lead to a peak taxation rate of 38% in the case of BC once you add everything up. So that's just quite frankly ridiculous, but we're still continuing to push hard. The other topic where we're in right now, and you already alluded to it, is there might be a window of opportunity to get this delayed just by the very simple fact that the government, after forcing everybody for 30 days into a campaign, has now decided to take a month and a half off and is not coming back till November 22nd. And then the interesting thing about the luxury tax is, even though it was announced and is part of the party program, the actual corresponding legislation hasn't been tabled. So they would have to table the legislation on the 22nd and get it passed within a very short period of time to then be implemented in January 1st. That's a tall order. So we're focused right now on seeing if there's any possibility of getting a delay on it, right? Just for the very simple reason that there probably won't be enough time to discuss a lot of the details involved. In calls that I've had over the last couple of weeks with dealers and dealer councils from different brands that are very worried about this, they have a lot of very important and pertinent questions. What happens is accessories included? Yes, no. What about F&I? What happens with accessories? What happens with lease vehicles? All of those things are there's a suggestion of how it can be, but we won't know what it is until the actual law is put on the table, right? Or legislation is put on the table. So we're continuing to push hard on that, but again, it would seem that it's coming next year, especially since it's also a bit of a personal project of the Prime Minister.
Yeah, it's when you think of the timing, it's interesting. They're going to come back to work near the end of November and then take Christmas at least 2, maybe 3 weeks off at that point. So exactly. I don't know how fast governments are going to be working in that time frame, but yeah, hopefully that timeline changes. Maybe Tim, because I have some inside ball because I'm in meetings with you guys on a regular basis, is that for those that think, the government's just picking on the auto industry, well, certainly they are in one respect, but in other respects, I mean, it's not just automobiles. I think the luxury tax, if I'm not mistaken, is going to apply to boats and planes and basically anything that's in that transportation vein over 100,000. Am I correct, or is that changed?
Yeah, it's still for boats and personal planes. Let's forget about the latter one for a second, because that is a very small sliver of the economy. And I'm not an expert on private planes, but what I understand, they're hardly ever bought anymore. They're basically on some leasing schemes and usage schemes. So not quite sure how that's going to apply there. The boating industry obviously is also up in arms around this and has joined their own fight on this. And we do exchange information with them, but they are facing a somewhat different set of challenges than we are. Their industry is mainly North American based. That would be affected over 100,000. We have been fairly successful in mobilizing especially the European based manufacturers that are the ones that would be most affected, Germans, Europeans, UK, Italy, right, that produce electric vehicles over 100,000. And we provided them with a very compelling case that they in turn made with the Canadian government about the free trade agreement that Canada just signed and implemented with the European Union. And then they turn around and implement a tax that 90% of the vehicles affected are European. So there's been some intense and continue to be intense discussions in the background between politicians and diplomats from the European Union, from Germany, and especially the UK, who is very much engaged at this point in time. So as you can see, we're pulling all registers and ideas that we have on this one.
So Tim, I want to say a couple of things just in general. First of all, the work that the CADA has done with the provinces over the last number of months, forget not just through the pandemic, but looking forward to the challenges that we face on some of the things you and I have just basically touched on, has been nothing short of incredible. Under your leadership, the organization is laser focused on the things that we need them focused on. Nobody's offered you or I 6 weeks vacation after the election or after the pandemic. So, and rightly so. We have a lot of work to do, right? And I'm not sure in talking to your board if a jet leasing is on the horizon or not, but I highly doubt it for both of us. But my point being is that you guys have the backs of the dealers, and I know that our organization is laser focused on that. And I think that's the message I just want to make sure that our members are hearing, is that we are not in an office 9-to-5 environment. We are 100% focused on what the future of this industry holds, and both of us have a lot of time invested in that. So I want to thank not just you but your entire team for that role you've played. I want to thank you for your support again of not just this podcast, but a lot of things that we've done this year as an association in a challenging year from Benefits 360 in providing that support, for allowing us to do that. So a huge thank you from us, from our board, and from our members, and the role you guys are playing. Let's end this on a fun note. I don't think I asked you this the last time I had you here, so I'll let you. Don't worry, I'll let you have the final word. But I'll put you on the spot. What's you remember? You have to remember. But what was your first car that you actually purchased? The make and model, and what was the motivation to buy that vehicle? Yeah, I got an ugly one.
I'll get to that in a second. Yeah, but thanks to you right back, and to all the provincial associations. I think we have learned, and not just through the crisis, but I think the way you, I, and all the colleagues around the country operate is that we're stronger together as a team, and the pandemic proved that. So a lot of people might not be aware of some of the things that go on in the background, but it's a continuous flow back and forth. So just one example, we were able to put out fairly quickly a national guide on how to operate, best practices of how to operate a dealership safely, right, during the pandemic. That national guide was based off of the excellent work, Todd, you did here in Ontario, right, with your group, and CCAQ did in Quebec, right? So we took those, married it, added additional stuff, and out went the national guide that we were able to put out there within a matter of a very short period of time. And that was basically based off of the great work that you guys. So just one concrete example of how this sort of back and forth flow. So also thanks back to you and to all the colleagues in the provinces.
Our pleasure. And let's not forget our buddy Jeff in Manitoba. Their safety association vetted those safety guidelines for us before the lawyers got to them. So
exactly,
that was all good. So exactly. I ask everyone the same question before I finish these podcasts, because I end on a light note. So help me out with your first car. And
first car I personally bought, was you probably never seen this one, Fiat Uno Turbo.
Oh no, you're right, I haven't seen it.
So okay, so do we have a few seconds? I can pull up a picture somewhere of it. Let me find it here.
You know what we'll do?
Let me find it for you. Fiat Uno Turbo. Let me just a second here. It was a great little car. I loved it.
Where did you purchase it?
I was in Germany at the time, and I had just.
You bought a Fiat in Germany.
I bought a Fiat, and I had just started working for a German luxury brand that I'm pretty sure you know who it is. Oh, I can't share my screen right now. You know what I'll do? Podcast. Put it up on screen.
We'll put it up.
Hey, boxy, small, but the turbo engine, man, that thing could fly. It was, not exactly very safe, but it could do 220 on the German Autobahn. So I had a lot of fun with it.
What year was it? Do you remember?
Oh God, this was 1990, I want to say. No, hold on a second. I'm getting my years confused here. 87, 80, 88, 89, somewhere around there.
Wow. Well, you got me beat. I think I had the same size car, but it was a 78 Honda Civic with a 4-speed manual transmission, and about 80K it maxed out. You had to get a hill to get up to highway speed, but
This was a 5-speed turbo engine, 1.1 liter. but it went like a little rocket, and
Awesome.
red with, yeah, I loved it. So
Awesome. Well, listen, I'll make sure that we get, we're doing video for this podcast, so I'll make sure that we get an image of that vehicle up for sure. And I'll tell the guys to be nice, not to paint it a funny color or anything like that. We'll make sure that we get a good, honest image up of it. So,
okay.
Listen, Tim Royce, President and CEO of CADA, I can't thank you enough for your time as always. Thanks again for the work you guys are doing, and hopefully we can do this again prior to the holidays to do one more update for our group.
Absolutely, Todd. Take care. Thank you so much.
Very much. You as well. Take care.